to Final Fantasy Heroes of Light. You know, guys, I gotta go. Hey guys, it's gonna be great. I gotta go. I can't do this. I have something to do. I have a thing and I have to go. I'm sorry. I gotta go too. Yeah, I kind of got to think too. I gotta go. I've been away at a little place called a Nintendo World, and that's why we had to jump ahead in the schedule a bit on the Final Fantasy, because I needed a portable game for those long country-wide flights. Alright, not gonna wear these the whole time. So yeah, there are a couple games that are supposed to be covered before this one, but they're not gonna affect, trust me, I know what they are, it's fine. Because this game kind of stands out. It's nothing like the games I've been covering or will cover soon, especially within this era. This exploitive era, I'm calling it, of Final Fantasy. It doesn't have any Final Fantasy icons, no Moogles, no Chocobos, and yet its entire goal is to remind you of the past. It is a game specifically setting out to be a retro-style JRPG, specifically Final Fantasy III, or even a little bit 5. The lack of Final Fantasy identity outside of, you know, some sort of gameplay connection led the developers to think, alright, there doesn't really need to be a Final Fantasy game, and it was decently successful. They started work on a sequel and decided it doesn't need Final Fantasy, let's call this something else, and therefore we got Bravely Default. This is the unofficial prequel to the Bravely Default series. It's a fairly niche JRPG series consisting of currently 3 games: Bravely Default, Bravely Second, and Bravely Default 2, the 3rd game. So yes, that's all I got for an intro. Nothing more needs to be let into this. It's a retro-inspired JRPG. Does it succeed? Does it remind you of those games? Let's find out. The story covers 4 heroes of light: Brandt, Unita, and Jusqua, and Air. I think she's just called Air. Air, the princess of the town, gets kidnapped, and Brandt, you start as Brandt, and he's a kid, he's gonna grow into a man, so he goes to see the king to become a man. I guess the king grants people to become men, and he's like, well, I can't bother with this, my daughter's been kidnapped. Maybe if you can rescue her, you'll be a man. So you and one of the other guys, Jusqua, I think, go on a quest to get the princess. You go in a cave, you find the princess, and you save her, and you come back. And then everybody in the town is stone. They've all turned to stone. There is a darkness upon the land, and now we gotta save the town. So you go and save the town, and then another thing happens, and if you haven't caught on, there's not much of a story to this game. It's kind of a series of small events, small little quests that have a beginning and end, and then somehow turn into something else, and then, you know, it's just stuff happens. I think the reason this story is like this, again, is it's inspired by retro games. It doesn't need a big character arc. There's not a lot of depth to this story, and that's okay, because it's just trying to be a chill little portable DS game, and it's charming. It's nice. It pulls that off. Not a lot of room for the characters to grow together as a team, because one of the core parts of the game is your party splitting up a lot. And it's not like in 4 where somebody leaves and then you just don't have them. You get to see everybody's story. You'll just beat a section with somebody in the party who split up, and then you'll see the other people who went another way later, and then eventually everybody meets up, and you just kind of collect all these stories along the way. It's cool. You'll find other guest characters to join you, so you're not alone. Sometimes you can have like a party of 1 and the game is just like, go ahead, and that's a little rough. But you got a number of party members, like there's Tort the mouse. He's a mouse. You'll get Cringe as one of your party members cringe. It's just a series of fun events. My favorite thing that happened is you're just wandering around town after a battle, and then a cat comes up to you, and you're like, "Oh, hello, cat. Would you like to join me?" And then the cat joins you. But before that, it cuts way back to another party member you haven't seen for like a couple hours. And it's Air, the princess, who I turned into the white mage. We'll talk about jobs later, but she eventually gets cursed and turns into a cat. And then that's how you figure out eventually comes back around to chasing down the other party member that you missed as the cat. A large portion of this game is figuring out how not to be a cat anymore. This is what I'm talking about. Low stakes, just kind of goofy adventures. It's fun. While this is happening, another party member has a storyline where he knows that Air got turned into a cat, so he's trying to find her. And then he finds another cat who's not Air, and you spend like hours with this cat as the player, knowing that's not her, it's just a normal cat. But you have to track down a sorcerer to try and reverse this curse, and then you do, and it's like, oh, well, that wasn't her. And then it moves on. Some might see it as like a lot of wasted time, but it's all about expectations. It's just lighthearted fun. And sometimes you need that, especially just looking at the way Final Fantasy has evolved into such epic, large-scale, like sci-fi, not even fantasy anymore, adventures. It's nice to have a little break. This story has about as much story, plot, as Final Fantasy III, but the difference between these two games is that Final Fantasy III takes itself seriously, even though it's a basic story with characters you can't even remember their names, and it's about light and dark. It acts like, you know, it's the biggest deal ever. But this game says, no man, we're just having fun, and I kind of respect it a lot more for that. That's all I really gotta say about story. We'll talk about more stuff later that happens in the second half where this game kind of undergoes a big change. But those are all the characters. There is Cid. I almost forgot a Cid update. I almost beat this game without finding Cid, and, you know, I pride myself on bringing you every Cid update humanly possible. And I haven't forgotten one yet. It almost happened. Cid is a character you can meet in a building in town that you can't unlock until later in the game, so that's why I almost missed it. But he just tells you your stats. He's just like a ninja guy. He's got a mask, and he tells you your stats. You've been playing for this long. You've won this many battles. You've died this many times. He's in the game. Cid is in the game. And I will report every Cid no matter what, even if he's pointless to the story. Let's get into the gameplay because this is a little weird. It is an AP system. Everything you do is reliant on AP. You have a maximum of 5 AP per character. Attacking is using 1, but abilities might use more. Magic, special abilities from your job, they'll all use more AP. Every turn you regain 1 AP, or you can also spend the turn boosting, which does not use AP. In fact, it gives you an extra 1. And that's where the balance comes in. You gotta find the right time to boost and the right time to normal attack and not waste too much, and the right time to just splurge and spend all that AP on something you really need. The other half to this battle system is very controversial. It is the lack of choice. You cannot choose who you target for anything you do in this game. This is tough to get used to. This is what makes the game very hard. So it starts in the combat part, where some enemies will be in the front line and some will be in the rear. Depending on your weapon, you will automatically be attacking the front or the rear. Sometimes they'll be side by side, in which case I think it's random that which one they choose, or they always choose the far left one, I don't know. So that's a little rough. You got a support guy in the back healing or something, you want to take him out, but all your weapons only attack the front guy. Well, you got an unbalanced team, you got to figure that out. Magic attacks will always attack the rear, for some reason. The rear. But that's honestly like the least of your problems. The key, super important thing that will aggravate you and might even turn you off from this game is the way priority works. The problem with priority is not being able to choose supportive spells for your party. A large chunk of this game you might have 1, 2, or 3, but the ending for like the second half of the game, you have a full party of 4 heroes of light. So I ask, when you use the spell of cure and it doesn't tell you who you want to cure, who do you cure? Well, again, the game doesn't tell you. The game doesn't tell you really anything. It's all about figuring it out for yourself. And what I'm pretty sure is happening is you automatically heal the person with the lowest health, which is usually what you want, but not always, right? For instance, I could have a tank who has 300 HP and a white mage who has 100 HP. Her health is almost always going to be considered lower than the tank. But my tank could be at 150 and I'd be like, he's half dead, I should heal him real quick. But my white mage is at like 90, I don't need to heal her, but my healer will heal her. And that is a little annoying. How do you prioritize who you raise from the dead when you cast raise? This one I don't know if I even figured out by the end of the game. If you have more than one person dead, raise, I think it just goes straight up left to right. This was a big problem in a particular fight for me, because I had somebody who would get wiped out in one hit. Even if I could somehow raise him and heal him up and buff his health, he would get wiped. His class was just not the right fit for this battle. My other guy, the damage dealer, was also dead and he could take the hit if I could just raise him, but the game didn't let me raise him. Every time I casted raise, it would resurrect the guy on the far left. Every time, and then he'd just die, and like I'd be caught in a loop. This happens in this game. You can get caught in a loop and like your moves work automatically. You're stuck and you might just die. The difference of one poorly placed attack at the wrong time could mean you lost your one guy who you need to live and it's almost impossible to get him back. You've lost. Some of you might be thinking, wow, F this game, I don't want to deal with any of that. And you know, this is a pretty hardcore game, I don't blame you. But I will say, the fun of the battle system is working with these limitations. Trying to figure out how you can do it and strategizing. Like, when you're in a battle, you got what you got. You don't know what you're expecting, so you have to go in and figure it out. And it's all in that moment. It is pretty fun until you hit like a massive difficulty spike of a boss who demands you play a certain way, who demands specific types of jobs or else you'll just kind of die. That happens a few times. Specifically, something like an elemental shield, like you'll need a fire shield to fight the fire boss. If you don't, he will multiple times team wipe with a big fire spell, and like you can't survive that without resistance of some kind. So like you just need to equip that or you lose. I don't dig that. But aside from certain specific bosses, you have a lot of freedom in this game to do whatever you want, because there is a job system. We've covered many a job system in our time on this show. So how does this one work? It's a little bit different. It kind of comes full circle. Remember, if you've been watching this long, the Final Fantasy 3 video or the 5 video, I made my analogy with the hats where everybody can swap out a different hat. We've come full circle because this job system is hat-based. When talking about job systems that don't quite work for me, I'll usually bring up Final Fantasy 3 or the Tactics series, because those games will tell you pick whatever you want. Look at all these jobs. Look at them. You can level them up. There's so much to learn. Each job will give you a new thing. You can figure out a new strategy for your battle. And then you'll hit a wall, because you can't actually pick whatever job you want, because there's certain jobs you really need. Unless you just want to play on extra hard mode. For a first time player, no, you kind of need to stick to basics most of the time. But the problem with that is, you haven't been leveling those correct jobs the whole time. So now, you're stuck 15 hours into the game with a bunch of leveled up jobs that aren't good, but the ones that are good are level 0 currently. So now it's time to grind, have a good time. This job system is really great because there's no leveling to the jobs. Every job is the same as soon as you equip it. You unequip it, there's no wait times. Remember the wait times in 3? Ugh, that was so stupid. These aren't tied to your characters. Your character's stats don't change depending on what job they have when they leveled up. They're totally independent. You can change on the fly. You can change to whoever you want and then immediately change back, and you won't suffer any consequences or miss out on any progress. Beautiful. So how do jobs really affect the battle system in that case? Well, they kind of bring along one little specific passive upgrade each. They're not like monumental, except for a certain few, such as White Mage. Any person, even if they don't have a job, can equip spells. Spells are not really traditional moves. You have to equip an item to your character, like a fire spell book. And that takes up 1 slot in their inventory. If they have that book, you can equip fire, and they can use it. Most spells will cost you at least 2 AP, but the specialty of the Black Mage job is that all black spells cost 1 less AP. And for White Mage, white spells cost less 1. So that's a massive deal. You only have up to a maximum of 5 AP at any given time in a battle, so you need to use those as sparingly as you can. If you're going to attack a lot, if you're going to heal a lot, which you are, you need a White Mage. And the other jobs, again, you can mix and match whoever you want. You can explore which tiny passive abilities you like. And also, jobs can be upgraded. These will increase your stats, but only while you're wearing a hat, so it doesn't really make a difference in leveling up or anything. How do you upgrade hats? With gems. How do you get gems? You find gems when you win a battle. You'll get a certain amount of gems if you win a battle. That's it. There's all different kinds of gems, and you use them for upgrading. The only other thing you use them for is for selling for money. Now, you don't get money from drops. You rarely get money at all in this game. So what the gem system boils down to is, are you going to save these to upgrade the jobs you really want? Or do you need to sell them to buy equipment? Because that's like your only major source of income. It's a risky balance, and if you know me, it really just meant that I didn't use gems for a large part of the game because I was too afraid to do anything with them that I would regret later. That is, of course, until I reached a certain town based on capitalism with many, many greedy merchants who run their own stores. There's a little minigame you can play, and I learned about a little, not really an exploit, but let's just say there's a way to make a crap ton of money without selling 1 gem. You can find a minigame where you run your own counter for the store. It's a cool minigame. You fill up the shelves with any item you have in your inventory, you just throw them right on, and then there are a certain number of price tags you could put on those items. There's 5,000, 1,000, 500, 100, you know, that's the whole thing. If you overprice an item, no one's gonna buy it. Unless there's one special price tag that goes on top of a price tag called a special deal or something like that, like a good deal. And it's just a label to like, for marketing. It's just marketing. It just makes people want an item more, even though it's the same price. And it tells you to fill up all 10 slots, and most of the time, you're not going to sell all 10 things unless you're having like a very good deal. And there's a chance you could sell nothing, but the way the exploit works is you just put 1 item on the shelf. If there's only 1 item, it's likely that somebody will get it before the time runs out in the minigame, so you just kind of have to wait it out. You buy ethers from the shop. They cost $1,000. That's kind of a lot, but you put them up on the store 1 at a time for 5,000 each. Nobody would ever buy that, but it's the only thing there, and they're a little bit tempted, but even that's not enough. So that's when you put on the special deal label on the ether. And then almost every time, 1 person will buy that. 1 idiot will buy your ether for $5,000. I repeated this many times on my flight to Super Nintendo World. I racked up about 100 grand doing this method, and money became a non-issue for the rest of the game, and I was able to hold my gems close for the upgrades that I wanted. That's a pro tip for you. That's the basics of the gameplay. Let's move on to like the later half of the game where things kind of change a little bit. At some point, after all your misadventures, going here, going there, finding out how to not be a cat, you eventually come together and you get hold of a dragon. A dragon that you can now fly around on the overworld, just like those classic Final Fantasies. You know, that airship moment where you're finally able to glide around the world as free as can be. Now we're in the endgame portion. Along with that trope comes another trope. The game telling you, hey, it's the end, and there's no more areas to explore, so now your quest is to revisit every single area you already explored to find a new boss and kill that boss and get some kind of item, MacGuffin thing, and then you'll get to the final dungeon. After the previous game we discussed, Final Fantasy IV: The After Years, repetition was something I did not need, so the fun I was having with this game did start to go down at this point, because it really just tells you go explore again, run through the same exact dungeons. You might not find anything, but you also might find the thing that you need. And I was like, walk through, please. And I just kind of went through that way. Yeah, without a walkthrough, this would be kind of miserable. So anyway, you do all that. You find all the MacGuffin items you need. Talk to all your friends. It's time to go to the final dungeon. The final dungeon is repeating a lot of the bosses you have already fought. Oh my god, I feel like I'm repeating what I said about stuff repeating in the last video. Like, you fight the same bosses again. Like, you just do that again. Because old NES or Super NES RPG, I guess that's just what you do. That's what you do. These bosses are very hard. You need to equip the right things. You need to be on your absolute A game to beat them. Did I mention this game is quite difficult? It is. You get to the final boss, and who is it? Oh. It's none other than Chaos. Chaos returns. It wouldn't be a classic retro NES Final Fantasy JRPG if it didn't have Chaos. I don't need to go into it. Again, I feel like I'm repeating myself so much. Do you guys like when I complain about specific points that really irk me, or is that getting old? Please let me know, because I do feel like I'm talking a lot of crap in these videos lately. But man, I'm not joking. The final boss, not the final dungeon, the final boss was at least 5 hours of gameplay for me. He is ridiculous. There's 3 forms, and I kept rechanging my strategy to beat another form, and then I get like, I got to the 3rd form. Okay, I'll just adjust this because the 3rd form uses this big attack and it's really painful. So I'll change my team to be this, and then the next try, I die on the 1st form because of what I changed, and I'm just like, what's the balance? What is the balance? Please, God, what is the balance? And yeah, if you didn't know, this game is not the most popular Final Fantasy game. There's not a ton of resources. I was basically sticking with GameFAQs forums for any tips on what to do, and everybody had a different idea. To not spend too much time on it, he basically has a team wipe attack called Big Bang, and he will attack you twice before your slew of attacks and after your slew of attacks. So you need to plan, like if your team is full health, you still need to tell your healer to heal, because he will attack you and then you'll do the heal. Everything happens in this specific order, and you need to have the perfect strategy. If you are one off, if you do the wrong thing one time, the wrong guy will die. You won't be able to revive him and heal him in time because he'll attack you twice. There's just this RNG element to it that it's definitely partially luck-based. It's not even entirely strategy. Oh my god, because that Big Bang attack is so devastating. No matter what your armor is or what you're doing, it's gonna hurt real bad. You need to have planned to heal immediately after he does that. Before he does the move, you need to have planned for that to happen. It's the real luck-based part that's painful. Is, like I said, he attacks twice. So he might heal himself instead of attacking. He might attack one person with a physical attack, or just do something else entirely. It's all about that Big Bang. There is a small chance that he will use Big Bang twice in a row, and if he does, you lose. And this isn't even an element of grinding, because at a certain point in the game, during the endgame portion, all bosses and enemies level scale to you. You cannot grind in this game. In fact, it's discouraged. If you get too high level, the boss's attacks will be even stronger and harder to deal with. I was like level 52, and when I was looking there on the forums, people were like, yeah, I was 40, I was 45, and I was doing this good. I was like, I'm like higher level than all these guys? First of all, how? Second of all, why? One of the most difficult final bosses in this series. No joke. In this little DS game. Oh boy. With that, why don't we just move on to the conclusion? Does this game succeed in its goal of reminding you of those retro, old school, hardcore JRPGs? Absolutely. If you're one of those guys longing for the past, but not like Final Fantasy IV, more like the original trilogy. If you're one of those weirdos who thinks the original trilogy of Final Fantasy games are the best ones, you have to try this. This game is a glimmering hidden gem. I did like this game a lot. In some ways, it does improve in terms of quality of life over those really old games. In some of the ways, it's even more difficult. So it's definitely worth a look. It might be worth a try. It's just, I'm all for, you know, creating an old school kind of game that goes against what Final Fantasy has evolved into and goes back in time a little bit, but it's just, you can copy what makes those retro games cool without copying what makes them, like, incredibly annoying and inaccessible to some people. But maybe the people who are really into those games don't want that accessibility. They want it to be that hardcore, that difficult, where some people would find it incredibly annoying to get through, others would be like, yeah, I'm gonna destroy this, I'll beat this game no matter what it takes. And you really feel like you've achieved something when you got through it. Maybe games they make today aren't like that because they're too easy. This game did make me nostalgic for the good old days. It also made me have PTSD flashbacks to some of the more difficult times I've had with those games. It really, it feels like it was made in 1989. But it is a DS game made in 2010. It replicates that old school feeling, for better or worse. You're either really into that, or you're like, okay, I'll skip this one. I don't know anything about Bravely Default, so, I mean, if you're into those games, why not go back to see what's basically Bravely First? It's the original game of that series. Are those games as hard as this one? Are they as old school? I don't know. I don't think I'll ever play those games, though. Not for any particular reason, they look fine. Oh, anything's possible, maybe, who knows. But yeah, I hope you enjoyed this little spin-off, but man, to be honest, it's still 2009/2010 in our current timeline. I don't need to be playing full-on retro nostalgia titles. Between this and the last game I talked about, can we come back to modern times? I'm good, I don't need these retro games yet, please. I mean, where's 13? Where is 13? I think it's officially been the longest between mainline games. Where is Final Fantasy 13? I just want to play the new one. I want to play the new shiny HD one. I want to play that one. But alas, there are still a number of spin-offs between now and 13. This show is going to change for a little while. It's going to be heavily focused on one major spin-off because Square Enix decided to make all of the rest of this sub-series in the span of about 1 year. So next time we will be beginning the journey to the end of the Final Fantasy Crystal Chronicles series. Stay tuned.